Lysander Whitfield's first love returned to the country with her child. To protect his first love's reputation and provide the child with a healthy environment to grow up in, Lysander specially organized a family reunion banquet. He held Seraphina Davenport and Orion Davenport by the hand, his face radiating happiness. Orion is my only child. Finian Whitfield and I stared at the harmonious family of three on the large screen, speechless. Finian looked up, holding back tears, and asked me, "Mom, does Dad not want me anymore?" Hearing Finian's question, I couldn't answer. I didn't know how to respond to his question. When I picked Finian up from school earlier, I clearly heard how his classmates referred to him. They didn't understand. Finian is just a child without a father. Finian stood under the tree, looking wronged, and shouted, "I don't have a dad, my dad's name is Lysander." But then he turned around and saw Lysander say that he was his only child. What about Finian? Whose child was Finian? Seeing that I wasn't speaking, Finian felt it too and lowered his head. His little body was trembling, but he still tried to give me a smile. Wanting to comfort me, "Mom, Finian isn't sad." My heart ached and a bitter taste filled my mouth. I held Finian tightly, sighed softly, and whispered, "No, Dad didn't abandon you. Dad loves Finian." Lysander emerged from the tall building across the street, holding Orion in his arms tightly wrapped around Orion's waist. Looking particularly cautious, Seraphina stood nearby, her hair neatly braided, wearing a long dress, looking gentle and composed. Seeing them, I instinctively hugged Finian tighter and turned away. After 7 years of marriage, I had always focused on family life. At that moment, I was wearing a loose t-shirt, my hair tied up casually, and carrying a canvas bag. Compared to the glamorous Seraphina, I looked disheveled. Finian was clinging to me, his body trembling slightly. I looked at him in panic and saw that his eyes were red and tears were streaming down his cheeks. "Mom, Dad has never held me." Yes, since Finian was born, Lysander had never once held him. Before we got married, I knew that Lysander had always harbored an unattainable dream in his heart. It was only because his first love went abroad that he lost confidence and chose me. I understood that he wouldn't love me, but I never thought he wouldn't even give his own son a little bit of care. Faced with Finian's hurt, I didn't know how to explain it to him. A new amusement park had recently opened, so I decided to take Finian there to relax. As soon as Finian heard we were going to the amusement park, his worries eased considerably, and he excitedly pulled me along, outside the amusement park. I took Finian to buy tickets, but the ticket seller apologetically told me, "I'm sorry, but the park has been reserved by Lysander today." I stopped reaching for my phone and asked, "Excuse me, is that Mr. Lysander?" Before the ticket seller could answer, a child's voice came from inside the amusement park. "Daddy, come quick. I want to ride the carousel with you." Lysander walked over slowly, with Seraphina holding his arm. Lysander smiled and looked at Orion gently. "All right, run slowly and be careful not to fall." I held Finian's hand and suddenly felt a tremor, my heart growing cold. Finian had mentioned more than once that he wanted Lysander to spend time with him. Watching an episode of a cartoon was fine, but Lysander? He pushed away Finian's outstretched hand, his face showing impatience. "I have a meeting to attend. I don't have time to watch cartoons with you. Can't you be more understanding?" Finian thought he was really busy, so from then on, he dared only sit quietly near Lysander, pretending that Lysander was accompanying him. But now, all his illusions were shattered. Finian lowered his head, held my hand, and said, "Mom, I don't want to play anymore. Let's go home." We returned home. The nanny, Beatrice Hodges, had already prepared dinner. Seeing the steamed shrimp, braised pork, and green vegetables on the table, I couldn't help but ask her, "Finian is allergic to shrimp and doesn't like greasy food. Beatrice, didn't you know that?" Beatrice kept her head down, fiddling with the already prepared plates. "You like these, and besides, there's vegetables too." I wanted to say something, but I couldn't think of what to say. I flashed back to Finian accidentally drinking a mouthful of shrimp porridge and breaking out in a rash all over his body. Lysander just glanced over and went to video chat with Seraphina. From then on, Beatrice no longer worried about Finian, although she had only been there for half a year. She knew that Finian and I weren't valued. Seeing Finian looking a bit sad, I sighed and decided to go to the kitchen to make some of his favorite foods. Evening, Finian had already taken a shower and gone to bed. I sat in the living room, watching the moon outside the window grow brighter. but feeling a growing chill in my heart. Just as I thought Lysander wouldn't be coming back, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Lysander was back. As he took off his shoes, he looked at me in surprise. "Aren't you usually asleep by this time? Why aren't you asleep yet?" Lysander handed me a delicate box containing a bottle of perfume. When I saw the perfume, I couldn't help but smile, because I've never liked floral-scented perfumes. Before I could say anything, Lysander spoke again. "Orion has been having nightmares lately. I remember there's a peace lock at home. Could you bring it out?" The peace lock was a gift my mother gave Finian when he was a month old, and it was the last thing she left me. I looked at Lysander in disbelief, feeling as though my heart had been sliced open, and it hurt terribly. Thinking about what had happened today, I couldn't help but ask him, "What did you mean by today's press conference? How could you give Finian's peace lock to someone else?" Lysander didn't seem very happy when he saw me receive the perfume, and he looked a little disappointed. When I asked him, his expression turned cold and he seemed irritated. "Are you arguing with me in the middle of the night over such a small thing? Serafina is returning to her country with the children, which isn't good for her reputation. Orion will also lack a healthy environment to grow up in. Isn't it only natural for me to help them? Can't you consider other people's feelings? Hurry up and get the peace lock out. I need to send it over right away. Otherwise, Orion will have nightmares and can't sleep." I looked at him with disappointment, thinking about Finian's red-rimmed eyes. "You only know about his situation with Serafina. Have you even considered what Finian and I are going through? I won't give you the peace lock. If you really want to be good to Orion, go buy one yourself." Lysander faced my breakdown and accusations with irritation, pinching his temples and glaring at me coldly. "Enough. It's just a name? Why are you arguing with me about it here? What have I ever done to you and Finian? It's just an old lock. How stingy of you." Lysander finished speaking and couldn't help but turn and walk away. The door slammed shut behind her, making a loud noise. I was startled and sat there dumbfounded. Lysander actually knew that this lock was bought by my mother. She had eaten vegetarian food and prayed for blessings at the temple for an entire month, and had specially had it blessed before bringing it back. How could it just be an ordinary lock? When I came to my senses, Finian was hugging a pillow and tiptoeing to wipe away my tears. "Mom, Finian is here with you, don't cry." I hugged Finian, feeling increasingly distressed. The next morning, I took Finian to school as usual. As I passed by a store, I saw they were hiring salespeople. I hesitated for a moment before deciding to go inside and take a look. "Hello, I'd like to apply for the sales position." I clenched my hands tightly, feeling uneasy. Before I got married, I worked at a company and was just one step away from being promoted to director. After I got married, Lysander said the family needed someone to take care of things, so I quit my job. 7 years had passed, and I had already forgotten most of my professional knowledge. Even applying for a sales position made me feel insecure. The store manager looked at me and was about to refuse me. Just then, Lysander walked in, holding Serafina's waist. Serafina picked up a dress to try on, and the store manager hurried over to introduce it, saying, "This dress really suits you." Hearing the term wife, Serafina smiled happily, her face blushing slightly. Lysander glanced at me nervously. Seeing I didn't react, she grew annoyed and didn't bother explaining. "Yes, this dress looks beautiful on you, making you even more radiant." Serafina smiled even more and gave me a wink. Lysander has always known how to make people happy, and he still does. I couldn't get any useful advice from him, so I decided to ask Alara to help me take a look. My expression grew even worse. I had bought a new dress earlier, put it on happily, and ran to ask Lysander, "Lysander, does this look good?" Lysander looked up, paused for a moment. Furrowing his brows, he said in an annoyed tone, "It's ugly. It looks terrible on you." After saying that, he walked away immediately. I stood alone in the living room wearing the dress, not knowing what to do. Now, I finally understood that Lysander could also compliment others. Under Serafina and Lysander's gaze, I lowered my head and said gloomily, "It's pretty." I turned away and slowly moved toward the door. Suddenly, I tripped and fell to the ground, hitting my forehead on the nearby chair. Blood immediately began to flow. The store manager rushed over to help me up. Serafina held her stomach, crying out in pain. "Lysander, my stomach suddenly hurts. Can you rub it for me?" Lysander reached out his hand but quickly changed direction, gently rubbing Serafina's stomach. Out of Lysander's sight, Serafina raised her eyebrows slightly. looking at me triumphantly. What's so great about getting married? Lysander still cares about me, right? I covered my forehead and smiled bitterly. Indeed. Lysander had always only had eyes for Seraphina. Seeing this, I really didn't want to stay any longer, so I quickly turned around and left. After returning home, I briefly tended to the wound on my forehead. Then, I stared at the wedding photo on the wall for a long time. Lysander's reluctant expression made me feel very upset. I took down the photo and casually tossed it into a corner. A thought slowly formed in my mind. There was nothing left in this house for me to stay for. Except Finian. In the evening, I went to school to pick up Finian. As we were getting ready to go home, we saw Seraphina and Orion get into a car we were familiar with. Lysander was driving. I instinctively covered Finian's eyes and whispered, "Today is Finian's birthday. Is there anything you want as a gift?" Finian pulled on my clothes, his eyes full of anticipation. "Will Dad come to celebrate my birthday?" I wanted to say something, but no words came out. After a long pause, I finally managed to respond. He should come back, but by the time the food had grown cold and the candles had burned out, Lysander still hadn't shown up. Finian's expression shifted from anticipation to disappointment. He lowered his head and fidgeted with his fingers in frustration. "Mom, Dad isn't coming back, is he?" Just as I was about to respond, my phone vibrated. I thought it was a message from Lysander, and my eyes lit up. I opened my phone and saw that it was a friend request from Seraphina. I quickly clicked accept. Soon after, Seraphina sent several photos. Orion was sitting in the dining room with a 6-layer cake in front of him. Shen Nyan looked at Orion tenderly, patiently helping him divide the cake among the other guests. Orion had Finian's safety lock hanging around his neck. I held the phone, my hands trembling slightly. I couldn't help but call him. When he answered, I heard the lively sounds from the other end. "Happy birthday to the little birthday boy." The sounds gradually faded away. Lysander walked to a quieter spot before speaking. "What's the matter? I already told you I was working overtime. Why did you come all the way here?" I bit my lip, trying to control my emotions. "There's nothing to say. You should just stay with Seraphina." After hanging up, I turned to look at Finian, whose eyes were red from crying. "Finian, Mom and Dad have decided to separate. Do you want to come with me?" Finian pouted, clinging tightly to my neck, his face filled with reluctance. "Mom, don't abandon me." I kissed his face, feeling as though I were holding a precious treasure. "I won't. I'll never leave you." After saying that, I took out the gift I had prepared earlier and gave it to Finian. After he settled down and fell asleep, I began to pack my clothes. The next morning, I went to print out the divorce agreement. After signing it, I took Finian and left that place. After hanging up the phone, Lysander felt like he had forgotten something important. He wanted to call me back to ask for clarification, but Seraphina called him over. "Lysander, you promised me that you would spend time with me and Orion during this period. There are only 2 days left. I hope you can focus." Lysander thought to himself, "I've been a good boy all along. Once these 2 days are over, I'll make it up to me and Finian." He put his phone away and turned to celebrate Orion's birthday. After the celebration, Lysander felt a bit flustered and grabbed his coat to go home. When he opened the door, he didn't see me. Only Beatrice was cleaning up the cake and dishes on the table. Seeing the cake, Lysander's face grew even more tense. Thinking of his unusual reaction last night, Lysander's body began to tremble uncontrollably. His voice also became a little shaky. "Was yesterday Finian's birthday?" Beatrice replied calmly. "Yes, sir." Lysander immediately became very anxious. He hurriedly pushed open every room, trying to find me and explain. Unfortunately, after searching the entire house, he still couldn't find me. When he called my phone, all he heard was a busy signal. Lysander panicked and sat down on the ground. Beatrice saw this and handed him the agreement. "This is what I saw on the table when I came this morning. I don't recognize what's written on it." Lysander took it excitedly, only to see the words divorce agreement written on it. His face turned pale instantly. His hands were trembling as he tore the agreement to pieces. I took out my phone to contact my friends and ask them where they had gone. But after searching for a long time, I realized that I didn't have any of their contact information. Then I realized that since getting married, I had been staying at home all the time and had no friends left. Lysander was a little panicked, feeling helpless for the first time. When Seraphina came looking for him with Orion, Lysander was already drunk and unconscious, hugging a bottle of alcohol. Serafina's expression changed, and she walked over to help Lysander up. Lysander, how could you drink so much? Lysander pushed Serafina's hand away and staggered to his feet. Don't touch me. Alara will think too much. Serafina was pushed back a few steps and looked at Lysander in surprise, but she quickly composed herself and said with red eyes, Lysander, do you remember the promise you made to me? Lysander paused for a moment, then smiled bitterly. Of course he remembered the promise he made to Serafina. It was because of that promise that he lost Alara Sinclair. Lysander took another sip of strong liquor and said, I remember you saved me back then. I owe you. I owe you nothing, Serafina said coldly. You owe me nothing. However, Orion is now my legal child, and I've left you a portion of the shares, enough for you to live comfortably in the future. During this time, I stayed with you because you said you weren't used to being back in the country. Serafina, let's end this here. After spending time together, Lysander realized that his feelings for Serafina were merely gratitude. During his time with Alara, he had gradually fallen in love with her. Serafina heard his answer, and a flash of displeasure crossed her eyes. She hugged Orion and walked over to him, asking, Do you no longer need me and Orion? To Orion, you are his father. Now that you're leaving, what will happen to Orion? Orion cried and demanded Lysander to hold him. Lysander found it strange because just a short while ago, he had felt so sorry for Orion's cries. But now, hearing Orion's cries, he only felt annoyed. He couldn't help but think Finian had never cried like this. Even when he rejected him, Finian would just curl up silently and stare at him. His eyes were filled with admiration. Thinking of this, Lysander's eyes turned red. He pushed Orion's hand away, his voice choked up. I'm sorry, this really isn't appropriate. I'm sorry, I only realized it now, Lysander whispered, and in the end, he felt that all the guilt in his heart was for Alara and Finian. Serafina put Orion down, and the displeasure on her face grew more evident. Lysander, why did you suddenly change your mind? Did Alara cause trouble with you? I can go talk to her. I'll ask her. Lysander pushed Serafina away forcefully, his face filled with irritation. Alara didn't say anything or do anything. It's me. I think we can't go on like this anymore. You go. Lysander ruthlessly pushed Serafina and Orion out of the house. As Serafina struggled, her phone fell to the ground, displaying the WeChat interface. Serafina's WeChat was displayed on the screen. Lysander unconsciously tapped on it and saw the photos he had sent to Orion to celebrate his birthday. Lysander finally understood that Alara's actions that night had a reason. He held the phone tightly, glaring at Serafina, and said, You're too much, Serafina. Lysander felt a severe headache coming on and impatiently pushed Serafina and Orion away. He staggered into the bedroom, collapsed onto the bed in despair, and fell asleep hugging the clothes I had left behind. The next morning, Lysander was awakened by the ringing of a phone. When he answered, Serafina's voice was mixed with the sound of wind and Orion's crying. Muttering to herself, the rooftop is so cold. Would jumping down bring relief? Shen Nian's heart tightened, and he quickly located Serafina using the GPS. Opening the rooftop door, he carefully comforted Serafina. Come down first, we can talk about this. Serafina stood at the edge of the rooftop, holding Orion tightly, her emotions running high. I don't want this. Why is Alara all you think about now? We were still together before you left the country. Lysander grew impatient, rubbing his forehead and speaking in a low voice. But you've already left the country, haven't you? You've married someone else. Haven't you, Serafina? I can't wait forever. Serafina shook her head urgently. But I'm already divorced. Why? Can't you divorce her and be with me? No sooner had she finished speaking than the sound of police cars echoed in the air. Safety pads had already been laid out below the rooftop, and Lysander glanced down briefly before turning and walking away. Serafina? I'm not going to interfere anymore. You're on your own. No matter how much Serafina and Orion shouted, Lysander didn't look back and just walked away. On the way home, Lysander saw a familiar figure and chased after him without hesitation. After leaving the Whitfield family, she didn't take Finian with her when she left the city. I grew up here. There's no reason for me to leave just because of him. I returned to the small house where I used to live with my mother and found a new school for Finian nearby. Here, he made many good friends, and no one called him that name anymore. I interviewed at several companies and finally found a sales job. Though it had nothing to do with what I studied before, at least I had stepped out of that small environment. That day, I went to pick up Finian from school as usual, but on the way home, Lysander's car blocked our path. Seeing him again, I felt nothing inside. It was Lysander who, upon seeing me and Finian, nearly shed tears. He quickly got out of the car and tried to hug me, but I stepped away, as he looked at me with regret and longing. I spoke first. "Are you here to ask me to file for divorce?" Lysander froze, his face turning pale. He painfully wiped his face. "No, Alara, I don't want to divorce you. I love you and Finian." Lysander's words sounded sincere, as if we were meant to be together, but I no longer believed it. I shook my head and whispered, "We've been married for 7 years, and you've never truly looked at me or Finian. Now you say you love me, and it's hard for me to believe." With each word I spoke, Lysander's face grew paler. By the end, Lysander lowered his head, trembling all over. When she saw the ring on my hand, she looked at me with hope and excitedly grabbed my hand. "You're still wearing the ring, which means you still care about me. You don't really want to divorce me, do you?" At his reminder, I realized the ring was still on my hand. I took it off and threw it into the nearby grass. Lysander froze for a moment, then immediately ran over to pick it up. As soon as he left, I grabbed Finian and hurried away. On the way, I hesitated for a moment before deciding to ask her, "Finian, Dad came to find us. Do you want to go back?" Finian shook her head, her expression firm. "Dad doesn't want me. Even if he comes, I don't want to like him anymore." I sighed and gently rubbed Finian's head. "Mom knows. Finian, go do your homework." In the middle of the night, it suddenly started raining heavily, accompanied by lightning and thunder. Finian woke up scared and couldn't sleep well. I held him tightly and rubbed his body gently with my hands. My phone suddenly lit up. Lysander sent me a message. It was a photo? Lysander's hands were covered in mud, and there were traces of blood on his fingers from being scratched by tree branches. In the center of his palm was the ring I had thrown away earlier. "Alara, I found the ring. Can you forgive me?" A moment later, Lysander sent another message. "It's thundering. Is Finian a little scared? What about you? Are you scared too?" His messages kept coming one after another, and I couldn't take it anymore, so I turned off my phone. After things quieted down, I finally fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, I took Finian to school. As soon as I opened the door, Lysander was standing outside. His hair was a little wet and messy, and his clothes were a different color. When he saw me and Finian, Lysander's eyes lit up. He picked up the breakfast next to him and handed it to Finian. "Finian, I bought this especially for you. Try it and see if you like it." Finian didn't even look at the breakfast and said stubbornly, "Uncle, you don't have to bring me breakfast. Mom already fed me." Hearing Finian call me uncle, I couldn't help but laugh. This really is my son. Seeing the shrimp dumplings in the breakfast, I couldn't help but smile teasingly. Lysander froze and awkwardly took the breakfast back. "I'm sorry, Finian. I didn't know you were allergic. I'll write down what Finian likes right now." Lysander looked at me expectantly, and I turned around and pressed the elevator button. After we entered the elevator, I finally spoke. "Don't bother writing it down. You haven't remembered anything all these years, so there's no need now. Is this really necessary? Have you ever cared about our feelings all these years? Even Beatrice, who's only been here for half a year, knows you don't like me and Finian. What's the point of doing this now?" Lysander's face turned pale upon hearing this, and his lips trembled. "I'm sorry. I didn't understand my own feelings before. I was wrong. I'll make it up to you guys in the future." After exiting the elevator, Finian and I got on the electric scooter. "No, we don't need it." After dropping off Finian, I hurried to work. Lysander followed me in his car, and I felt a bit annoyed but couldn't do anything about it. At the office, I was busy attending to customers. Until I heard something fall outside the door, I realized Lysander had a high fever. The doctor took off his mask, shook his head, and looked at Lysander, saying, "Even young people need to take care of their health. You got soaked in the rain all night and still dared to walk around in wet clothes. You really don't value your body." Lysander lowered his head guiltily, then sneakily glanced up to gauge my reaction. I sighed helplessly. "Lysander, are you trying to play the victim?" Caught off guard, Lysander panicked and tried to say something, but I spoke first. "You don't need to do this anymore. It's really unnecessary. I'm not angry, and I'm not trying to get your attention. I really want to divorce you, so, Lysander, sign the divorce agreement. I have no interest in your property. You don't need to worry about that at all." After hearing this, Lysander suddenly sat up straight. The Roman 4 needle tilted, and blood kept flowing from his hand. He seemed unaware of what was happening. frantically waving his hands. It's not like that, Alara. I never thought you'd want my property, more importantly. If it weren't for you always being by my side and supporting me, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today. Half of my property is already yours. I just really don't want to divorce you. Can you give me another chance, Alara? Hearing Lysander's plea, I felt nothing but frustration. Why does he think a few apologies can erase the pain Finian and I suffered? I stared at him blankly. Excuse me, did you not understand, Lysander? There's no future between us. I turned to leave, but Lysander suddenly called out to me. Can you give me one more week? If you still want a divorce after a week, I'll handle the paperwork immediately. I didn't respond and left the hospital. The next morning, after dropping off Finian, Lysander stayed by my side the entire time. When there were many customers, Lysander would proactively introduce himself. When there were fewer customers, Lysander would sit beside me, staring at me intently. When he noticed my neck was stiff, he would come over to massage it for me. In the evening, after picking up Finian, Lysander suggested taking us to the amusement park. Lysander held Finian and placed him on his shoulders. Finian had never experienced anything like this before and was excited. His eyes sparkling. Seeing his expression, I felt a pang of sadness. What was ordinary for other children was a new experience for Finian. A week passed quickly. Lysander sat across from me, looking at me expectantly. Alara, a week has passed. Do you still want to divorce me? I smiled, not understanding why he would think that. 7 years of emotional abuse couldn't be undone in just a week. All right, let's divorce. Lysander lowered his head, gave a bitter smile, and pulled out a divorce agreement. Just sign this. I've already signed it. The property has been divided. I looked at the agreement and signed my name on the last page. After signing the agreement, Lysander and I went to process the divorce. Outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, Lysander's eyes were red, and he seemed to want to say something but stopped. I looked at him, confused. Lysander took a deep breath and stammered out the words. May I go see Finian? Thinking of Finian's little face, I couldn't help but smile. He will always be your child, and that will never change. After saying that, I got on my electric scooter and left. From then on, Lysander often went to visit Finian. Every time he went, he would bring something with him. Sometimes it was a small cake, sometimes a toy, and other times a piece of clothing. Every time she came, Lysander would bring some for me as well. I didn't accept any of them except for Finian's. Lysander always left feeling a little down. Finian became much more cheerful, and his relationship with Lysander improved slightly. I didn't interfere after all. Finian's growth couldn't do without his father's influence. Besides that, I was also working hard to improve myself. Thanks to my excellent grades, I was promoted to store manager. In the future, I will do even better.